I
I've
know.
got bees.
Oh, you're into bees? Oh,
There's a
that's
reason.
awesome. I can't wait to hear it. Alrighty, we're ready to start. This is Denise Mraz with Vegas Views on KKVV, and I'm here today with my friend Rebecca Wood.
Hi, Denise. Thank you for having me.
You know, I know you're running for CD4,
Yes, ma'am.
and I'll tell you what, this is tough.
It is.
I ran for office, and people think, oh, it's fun, it's glamorous. You wake up every day looking tired, and then the next thing you have to do is, how can I keep my energy up? What can I do? And I mean,
Exactly.
it's grueling.
It
It's a
is.
marathon. What are your views for CD4? I know that you've got an opponent that doesn't do a lot with town halls. He doesn't seem very connected to
The incumbent.
the people, yeah. And I I don't know. I think he could probably do a better job.
Well, I believe that connecting with the people is the most important thing, especially when you're in an office like Congress, because if you are not connecting, then
Mhm.
you're not representing. You have to connect with all the people because what your job is to represent them and to hold what they hold dear accountable in the government. You
Mhm.
have to represent everyone. You represent the rules. And CD4 is huge. We have
That's a hard district. I mean, as the crow flies, it's manageable, but doing it by road is really tough.
we have put thousands of miles on our vehicle. I mean, going to Ely and to Yerington. But you know what? And to Pahrump. But I love it
Mhm.
because I love the people
Mhm.
and the people in Clark County, the people in Pahrump and in Armagosa. Everyone's so amazing. And I think it's because I truly like to listen. I want to hear what's going on, what concerns them, because what concerns this district is huge variety. Our rural counties are very concerned about their water rights.
Oh yes, definitely. What does concern them? I mean, water rights seems to be at the top.
With our rural counties, water rights and healthcare, and I think healthcare is on
Mhm.
everyone's mind. And healthcare is one of my top priorities because when we got Obamacare, we lost our mental health. And in Nevada, we have in the country we have 22 veterans dying a day by suicide. We are
Mm.
11th in the nation by suicide. Mental health has to be
Mhm.
brought back and we have to take care of our people.
I heard President Trump say that the $300 a month health care plan is coming in the very near future, and it's going to be up to states to how we plug in. So, how he had said it would look is a base package at 300 plus riders. So, if you remember the days of Aflac when you could get the maternity rider and
Right.
the specialty riders, do you think that you can get something like that done when you're in Congress?
I think that would be great. I do have a couple of non-negotiables.
What are they?
I believe pre-existing conditions
Mm-hmm.
have to be included. My granddaughter's 3.
Mm-hmm.
She has a very rare genetic condition. She's the third diagnosed in the world.
Mm.
So, on a personal level,
Mm-hmm.
pre-existing conditions, if they weren't covered, it's a non-negotiable.
Right.
You have to. Everyone's got a pre-existing condition,
I, I don't think there's a person in the world that doesn't have a pre-existing condition.
right?
So that is a great one. We're still though so far behind from where we were even 10 years ago. I mean, so let's dial back the clock to 1973 when Nixon signed a bill, congressional bill into law that made uh, healthcare from a nonprofit to a for-profit. And then it all seemed like it kind of went downhill since then.
Right.
I'm wondering, could we roll that back?
Wouldn't that be great?
Just think of it. I mean, back in the day, how many years did I pay? $212 a month for my own. I've paid my own health care my whole life.
Right.
And I think for about 15 years, that's about all I paid. And obviously now, that was so long ago. But how can we get back to that kind of world? Because it made things so much simpler when our healthcare was nonprofit.
Right. Well, I wish we could roll back the clock in
I
times
know.
like that, but even if it's not possible,
Hmm.
we need to take what the best parts of that were and roll that into our future.
Sure.
We need to look ahead and we need to look ahead at what's going to be compatible, what we can use for our children and their children, and how can we set it up not only for us but for the future.
Hmm. Well, I love this strong, bold moves Trump is taking
Hmm.
to change our medical supply from China to other trusted sources. And of course, India is stepping up. So he was there in India about 2 weeks ago,
Yep.
and they committed to essentially giving us, stopgap supplying things that we were having come in from China can now come in from India.
Right.
And I'm just so amazed at the speed at which Trump moves.
He is
He's
doing
really
amazing.
unbelievable. So, in Congress, though, now also has a bill in place for that. Have you been reading up on that, or?
The stimulus bill.
Well, there is the stimulus bill, but there's also another bill for supply chain. Let's talk about stimulus first and come back
Okay.
to supply chain. How I just read today that Mitch McConnell, um, you know, I mean, its numbers so huge that people can't even imagine 200 trillion there, 300 trillion there
Right.
for the stimulus package. But this is what America needs. Do you think it will be adequate and enough, or?
I think for some people it will be more than adequate, and for others it won't be enough. I
Mhm.
think that we need to do something quickly.
Mhm.
I feel like we need to get. The problem I have is that, and I understand where they're coming from. Okay, so in this stimulus bill, which has not been passed yet, it hasn't been passed, we are giving $35 million to the get curtains in one of the big theaters in New York. I'm sorry, it just left
What?
my, yeah,
A humanities thing? Arts and the humanities? Oh my
right.
God, this
So,
is
okay,
terrible.
and yes, arts and humanities are important, but the problem I have with what Congress is doing is
Mhm.
they're adding in things that aren't important. They're not
Mhm.
focusing on we the people. They're not focusing on the individual American. Yes, that's important, but that is not our crisis right now. Right now,
Mhm.
our crisis is the people.
Mhm.
And I feel that we need to take out Congress is not, they're not focusing on that. They are so putting all this extra stuff in that's not
Do
we
you
the
think
people.
do you think Congress could be so compromised that they're just not able to work in any kind of methodology or mode, a that truly addresses problems? Because have we not been I'll call it legislating band-aids and kicking the can down the road? I mean, how do we quit? Do you be the dissenter and stand up and say,
I do.
I will not. I refuse. I do not consent. I mean, how do we stop the ball rolling? You'd be like the only person at the mid mountain holding up this massive boulder.
There's a fine line though. Yes, I'm not afraid to be the dissenter.
Mhm.
I'm not doing this because I need a job. My life
Mhm.
is good without it.
Yes.
I'm not doing this because I have higher political
Mhm.
aspirations. Honestly, the president is serving 8 years. I would love to serve 8 years, and I'm out.
Mhm.
Congress was never meant to be a lifetime career.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm not afraid of that. But the fine line is you don't want to make enemies because you have to find ways to work together.
Mhm.
And that's what everybody's missing. Compromise for me is not an option. Creating win-win situations, that's the option.
Mhm.
Because when we create compromise, somebody's losing something and it creates anger. But if we can create something where we can both win, but no, I'm not afraid to be the dissenter. I'm not afraid to put the bill in for term limits.
But the agenda for the other side is always for government control. And how do you balance that? Because you're for limited government,
Yes,
they're for government control.
right.
So working together, but there's two totally. So I mean, theirs is anti-constitutional.
It is.
You are pro-constitutional. So how do we? I mean, to me, I just think there has to be more red thinkers than blue
We elect
thinkers,
we elect we elect more Republicans to office.
or
That's
independents.
or independents who feel the same way we
Yeah,
feel.
conservative. Mhm.
Conservative. We have to get in each state, each person has to look
Mhm.
at their candidates.
Mhm. I think it's so important because I still talk to people who consider themselves conservative, but they're really kind of not. And then
Right?
others who actually share a lot of our views. But for example, I feel like the GOP is in some counties in Nevada have done a great job
Right.
being embracing many walks of life and many types of thinkers because they're they're not about a control agenda. But
Right.
it seems like in Clark County, things are so set in stone. I mean, I worked on the platform committee, and somebody said, well, if somebody's not a Christian, they can't be a Republican. I'm like, well, okay, well, let's start off with that conversation. Because how do you get somebody to go from liberal thinking to conservative thinking, but then also change everything else about them? I mean, you can't do it. So when you're out talking to constituents,
Yes.
how do you handle that? Because I'm sure you run into it all the time.
I have a lot of fun with that part of it. I've actually re-registered people to vote
Mm-hmm.
from Democrat to Republican, and I just tell them about me and why, personally, why I should be their candidate,
Mm-hmm.
and why I feel that everyone needs to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, you said you can't be a Republican without being a Christian. You know,
I mean, they
a
said
lot of
that.
Republicans think they're Christians and they're not, though.
Exactly.
So
So you
that's a
can't even
heart issue.
you can't have the conversation really. It's a hard conversation because for example, there are certain religions that call themselves, Christian thinking, but then when you dissect them, perhaps they aren't. And we are all in these I'll call it personal evolution modes.
Right.
So you can't change everything about a person. But if you could change just one thing or two things nationally, what are your top priorities? Because obviously voters have, they're one issue voters. But
Right.
if we could be three issue voters, what do you think we should be focusing on?
I would like to focus on our health care.
Mhm.
I believe it's important for us to keep our rights, our First Amendment right, our Second Amendment right. I especially believe we need to, you know, keep our right to freedom of religion. And,
Mhm.
that's all religion. It's not just the religion we think is right. But if we're going to protect one, we need to protect all religion. We need to
Mhm.
get government out and let people do what they think is best.
Mhm. Yes. Well, I think we're having kind of a master class in constitutionalism with
Right?
this coronavirus crisis.
Right. Well, I do claim to be a constitutionalist,
Oh, that is awesome.
and I believe very strongly in the Constitution. And I feel like if we follow the Constitution, that we're going to be protected.
Mhm.
It's the rule of law for us.
You know, I come across this conversation a lot where, and so I'm 54, and
Same as me.
yeah, and a lot of our age group, we were denied, any kind of constitutional education. Looking at the Federalist Papers, I didn't really even remember that there were Federalist Papers until about 4 or 5 years ago, and I started reading them again. I was just really amazed. But when we come back, so we're going to go on a 90-second break, but when we come back, we can talk more about that. And I wanted to find out from you, how could people vote the Bible, or should they?
All right.
And we'll pick that back up in a few minutes, or, in a minute when we come back. And this is Vegas Views, and we're here with Rebecca Wood. Hey, it's Denise with Rebecca Wood, and we're
Hi,
back here,
Denise.
hi, with Vegas Views, and we're spreading peace through constitutional truth. And I wanted to remind people that our local call-in number is 702-650-KKVV, and that's 650-5588 if they have any questions for myself or Rebecca, and we'll take those as soon as they roll in. So,
Sounds
Rebecca,
good.
we kind of left off the last segment with how do you vote the Bible, or should you? Because, okay, let's face it, in Nevada, 30% of our voting bloc, which have been identified as, I'll call potentially conservative,
Right.
identify as atheist. So we have our most significant and supreme law of the land gem of a constitution, all of our freedom documents, which are based on the created, you and I,
Hmm.
under the moral authority of a creator,
Right.
right? Because you can't have those rights unless you have conscious living.
Correct.
That's how we get to liberty, right?
Right.
Liberty equals freedom plus conscious living. So,
Absolutely.
so how do we, I call, balance this in our conversations with people out there? And, if say I identify atheist, how do you approach that? And do you drive home the fact that people should vote the Bible? Or how do you approach it? Because it's a hard one. I mean, on one hand, you don't want people to be put off because we are trying to teach the Constitution.
Right.
But how do we balance that with the fact that they're not under any moral authority?
You know, I believe it's the Christian's responsibility to vote
Oh,
biblically.
mm,
That is their responsibility.
yes.
I mean, the Bible tells us to pray for those in authority. So if it's important enough to tell us to pray for them,
Hmm.
then I believe that it's important enough for us to take that responsibility and vote biblically. When I'm talking to someone who is not a Christian or who is an atheist, you know what? I do what Jesus did. And I try to just love them where they're at.
Yeah, but part of that's being a truth hawk. So let's look at John the Baptist. When
Right?
he went truth hawking, he came back without his head. So that's part of, I think, the whole challenge of being a candidate,
Hmm.
because you're going to get into conversations. I guess one of the most divisive and difficult conversations are abortion,
Right.
because for the last 50 years we have it has been told to the populace that it's their right to have an abortion and that the unborn are unconstitutional people. So how do you have that conversation and yet not have them running away, but at least getting some kind of understanding?
Usually I let them talk first so
Mhm.
that then they have to have to listen to me as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we point out facts to them.
Mhm.
You know, if I start, the way I handle it is I
Mhm.
start with, let's be honest. So you think that a baby is born, and do you think it's okay for them after that child is born to decide whether or not to kill it?
Mhm.
And a lot of people I ran into are shocked that that's even allowed. They don't even know that that's allowed.
So they're unaware of the I'll call it the desensitizing that
Exactly.
Roe versus Wade started as this, oh, health of the mother kind of thing, or an
Less than
oops.
less than 1% of all abortions is for the health and welfare of the
Right.
mother.
Mhm.
And less than 1% is due to rape or incest.
Mhm.
And I think those are important facts too that we need to keep into play. In our country, we kill over 2,000 babies a day due to abortion.
That's shocking.
2,000 a day
And
in the US.
how many of those would be possibly of a minority? I've heard that the African American population has the largest segment of that.
Margaret Sanger's whole purpose when she founded Planned Parenthood was to take out the minority population.
It was?
That was her
Oh.
whole purpose
Oh.
in founding Planned Parenthood and making abortion legal. It
Mm.
was to take out the black and the ethnic population and the poor. That's why you find Planned Parenthood in the lower income. You
Mhm.
find them in eth- you know ethnical ethical
Maybe
not
urban
urban
settings.
settings
Mhm.
where there's less white populace.
Mhm. But could you have the conversation with somebody of where should the heartbeat bill begin and end? Because I feel like the heartbeat bill can kind of be a good starting point
It's a
for a
great starting point.
conversation to
Hmm.
say, where do you think it should be?
Right.
And at least, there's some kind of common ground there. Now, of course, Planned Parenthood thinks it should be at 39.999 weeks, which is so horrific. When I started delving into this issue, I had no idea
Right.
of what was going on. And now that I know, my only concern is not on my watch. And how can we move that back? So, what are your thoughts on the heartbeat bill?
I love the heartbeat bill, and the people that I talk to, most people agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
You're pregnant. Um, Me personally, I would love to just get rid of it, but the heartbeat bill I think is a good start. I think
Mm-hmm.
also, what if we made adoption more affordable?
Oh, that's a great one.
What if in our health care we included a measure to, you can get abortions in your
Mm-hmm.
health care, that's covered, but infertility treatment and is not covered.
Mm.
Infertility testing is not covered. So, and neither is adoption. So, what if we, helped adopt these babies to these people?
Yeah.
You know, then
Wouldn't it be something if you had sort of like a lifetime child credit? And oh, we've got somebody in line one. All right,
all right.
line one, go ahead.
Yes. What is your position on including fertility in healthcare?
Oh, that is perfect. That's what we were just talking about. I feel like if, honestly, one of the bills I want to put into Congress when I'm
Mm-hmm.
there is that if you're an insurance company and you're going to fund an abortion, then you need to fund infertility testing and treatment and adoption. I think that that's only right. If you're going to try and kill babies, let's try and bring life. We don't even know how many babies. I mean, out of these 2,000 a day, what is that? 800, 700,000 a year? What could
Or
have been
more,
cured?
because so many of those are probably even unreported statistics, so it's
Exactly.
obviously probably much higher than what we're really thinking.
I know here, um, one of our public service, I won't mention them because I don't want to, places, they will take care of your abortion, but they will not give you infertility testing or treatment,
Mm,
let alone think about adoption. But why shouldn't
hmm.
that be included?
It definitely should be. Is,
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
Well, what other bills are you thinking about? Because I know there's probably so many things you can. I mean, obviously, when you get to Congress, things are already going to be rolling along
Right.
because it's not a total changeover like the Nevada State Assembly where they're kind of starting from scratch every January. But what are you thinking? Like, what are some other, priorities for you?
That's one of my priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Getting mental health covered is a
Mm-hmm.
high priority with the suicide. Did you know this is in Nevada? The number one killer of our children between 10 and 19 years old. Do you know what it is?
Suicide.
Suicide.
You know, it's a shocking statistic, but it sort of does not. It doesn't totally shock me because when you look at life when we were growing up,
Right.
it was come in when the street lights go on.
Drink out of the hose.
Yeah, drink out of the
Ride your
hose.
bike.
Get that grass off your feet. I mean, things were so much simpler. We had no electronic devices.
Right.
There was public shaming, which I felt went a long way.
Right.
And I mean, life was just, it was simpler. And I'm not going to say I grew up in Mayberry RFD, but life was simpler.
Well, and if the neighbor's mom caught you doing something bad, it was
I
almost
know,
like having your own mom
quit
catch you.
quit throwing tomatoes at the shed.
Right?
But how do we sort of get back to some of the values? Because like, let's look at Congress right now. They want to re-stimulate the Federal Reserve, which is essentially shut down for the
Right.
moment, right? With their digital currency dream. That's insanity. We just got
Yes.
rid of the Federal Reserve and the central bank. So,
Right.
I mean, they're literally on their last legs, which is right where we want them, because then we can change over to the gold standard. But, digital currency is one of those huge things where people have been, I guess, conditioned to it because of cryptocurrency.
Right. I
What do
feel
you
like
think?
I feel like digital currency is going to lead to chips being implanted in us,
Yes.
and I'm against that.
Mm-hmm.
I I will fight that till my dying day.
Yeah, yeah. And the social credit system in communist countries is based on some sort of AI identification.
Right.
So, I mean, cryptocurrency would be the perfect way to do it. I mean, we're kind of in that mode right now because
Right.
coronavirus crisis management has set some government places into total credit debit card mode. They won't accept
Right.
cash.
I think that's where we really have to elect people that understand the
Hmm.
long-term ramification of this.
What's your background in, understanding? I know you were Miss Nevada, and I mean, there's a lot of cool
I was Mrs. Nevada.
Mrs. Nevada, and I was reading some of your bio, but to me, some of this landscape is so financial and it's complex. But you have an accountability team. Will they help you with that?
My accountability team is one of my greatest blessings. They'll help me with everything. They will call me out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my background, we have a business. I have a small business that I
Oh, what
run.
is it?
I'm a freelance photographer and I work for
Oh,
several of the big companies.
oh, okay.
Um, which I kind of put on hold while I'm campaigning.
Sure.
I also had at one time a construction cleanup company, and we
Mm.
employed several people, and then we
Wow.
had the crash. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the my dad was a pastor,
Oh, no kidding.
so I grew up in the church. He was also in the military,
Mm.
and that's
So
where
you're an Army brat?
I'm an Air Force
Air
brat.
Force brat.
But my
Okay.
grandpa was Army, so don't hold it
Okay.
against me. My uncles were
Mhm.
Marines and Navy, and so my background includes a wide variety.
Mhm.
I feel like I can touch a lot of people because of my background.
Yes.
You know, I met my husband on Guam. I
Oh.
graduated high school on the island of Guam. So I understand what the families go through, the families
Mhm.
of our veterans.
Mhm.
My dad died in a VA hospital. Had
Oh.
he not been in a VA hospital, I don't know that he would have died.
Mhm.
So I believe our veteran care is important. And I
Yeah,
see,
single payer healthcare, right? That's a really scary thing.
but I see all these things of my life, how they are coming together, and how I feel like they've prepared me to represent a wide variety of people.
Mhm. Wow. Coronavirus crisis. This is crazy. I've tried to keep up with it, so I watch the hour, report every day, and then I mean, Trump never sleeps.
I, 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 you can, I
He
can't
he's
imagine.
he's unbelievable, and then Pence is there too, and they have the coronavirus guidelines. So it's that like that 2-page PowerPoint thing. I'm sure you've seen it. And
Right? Yep.
I, do you feel like some governors have overstepped their bounds on the I'll call it interpretation of the guidelines?
I do.
Mhm.
I mean, I actually had somebody from another country when Nevada went dark, when Las Vegas, when Nevada went dark. That's what I call it.
Sure.
Email me, and he said, "How's that freedom working out for you now?" Direct quote. I
but
was like,
but they don't
"Wow."
realize that the communism that we have in our state has created that monster.
Right.
Because if we look at the I'll just call it in broad terms human trafficking.
Oh,
Human trafficking was far beyond what anybody thought. I mean, I never even knew or had any inclination living in my fishbowl of a life, before 4 years ago, of the broad spectrum of how trafficking was happening, and all of the horrific things that went along with it. I think right now we're in a major reset, but part of the properties that were involved were probably trafficking. And so how now Governor Sisolak has asked President Trump for a bailout for casinos and stimulus, which would be your congressional duty to say, are we going to pass a bill for that or not? Do you think that we should?
I think that, you know, if they truly need the help, they do supply a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's screaming, "Don't help any corporations, don't help any corporations."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's a fine line, but if they need the help, then we need to look into helping some of them, because look how many jobs they provide. Look how many people lost work when all of our casinos shut down. You know, thank God the strip is not in my district, but
Mm-hmm.
people are in my district that live and work on the strip, and
Right.
they're suffering because of it. And,
But
you know,
could you say that small businesses are suffering more?
they're absolutely suffering more.
Mm-hmm. And the casinos. So let's look
Then
at.
let me clarify.
Yeah.
They're suffering more than than the big corporations,
Mm-hmm.
but all of the people that are
Right.
out of work are
Are-
suffering.
All of them are suffering, yes. But let's look at casinos. So in Nevada, we have roughly this structure where, and I looked at this a couple of years ago when I ran for office. Their effective tax base is between 2 and 3%. So do you think that they've had enough runway all these decades to have saved up enough cash to get through a hard time?
I do think they should have, and I think if they need a bailout, they need to prove it.
Yeah, and let's look at MGM. So they've been slowly selling off their properties and
Right.
then releasing them, and so that they're kind of in this non-leveraged situation, and they're not property rich, but they have high payments now.
Right.
But again, didn't they have the foresight? to see this through and go, boy, I hope we have enough cash on hand should something happen. I mean, how do you say that you should get a bailout? Now, by the way, the stocks are going down. Those people are taking advantage, buying more stock that they
And
can
at what
dump when
point
it's
do we
highs.
stop the bailouts? Because eventually it's going to hurt everyone. If
Mhm.
we cannot bail out every single person and every single corporation, it would kill us as a
Mhm.
country.
Yeah.
I mean, these are uncharted territory. It's
Especially with
uncharted
the
territory that we're
coronavirus
in.
crisis.
But there's some takeaways we can get from the coronavirus.
Mhm.
We need to be self-sufficient as a country.
National preparedness, national
National
security.
preparedness. But let's bring manufacturing home.
Oh, totally. So we've
Let's not outsource.
Yeah, so we've got the, Made in America. Remember when we were growing up and, Reagan was all about Made in
Right.
America, and we really did get away from that because we said, oh, well, look at the pollution. Wouldn't you rather have that pollution in China? But then, you know, now equating it to what I know now about, say, mining,
Right.
sadly in America, we are not able to manufacture very much rare earth mineral product because we don't have the capability due to a lot of constraints of the administrative agencies to create rare earth mineral production.
Right.
China is shipping our rare earth mineral to Molycorp right over the border of Nevada and then sending it in containers back to China to be, processed into things for Space Command and, all kinds of other industries, electronics. So we're unable as a country because we don't have the supply.
Right.
You know, how would you jumpstart that if you were in Congress?
I think we would need to reevaluate the regulations that we have in place. Maybe give these manufacturers and these companies incentives. Come back here. We'll
Mhm.
give you some incentives. I mean, look at all the jobs that they'll bring back.
Mhm. Oh yeah, be.
There's ways to do it ecologically as well.
Mhm.
We're not in the same place we were even, 50 years or even 10 years. We've learned so much.
Do you think that we should nationalize some industries to get them even, I'll call it more? Obviously, I'm a limited government person. You are too.
I am. That's why I was like,
But on the same token, nationalizing some productions would help with scientific jumpstarting because small companies just don't have the capability, and even mid-sized companies don't have the capabilities because we have like gone too long without having the capability, and then
right.
we've got all of our progressive universities who have now we have found out have sold us out to the TTP program and
No
other
doubt.
terrible things. So how do we kind of, I'll call it, do you have some kind of bridge pathway to get back to what America was, say, in the 80s? Or do you just say free enterprise for everybody? What's your approach?
I wish we could say free enterprise for everybody. I think we need to make it so that people can, we have the SBA, so the small businesses maybe look at
Have you ever
reevaluate.
tried to apply for one of those loans?
Oh yeah, I have, and you know what? That's what
I
was
don't
always.
I don't have a migraine now, but believe
But
me.
we will. We need to reevaluate the regulations that the SBA is under,
Okay, yeah.
so that there's so many people I know who would love to start a business, but they
Mhm.
can't get through all the red tape.
I know.
And maybe that's a start to doing it. So we do it, we help them out on a national scale for a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
and then you're released.
Okay.
You employ so many people, we'll give you, that's what they're talking about with the stimulus. Keep your people employed, make your paychecks for six
Mhm.
months, and then you don't have to pay us back. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a good option for us to look at with small businesses who want to come on, or with these companies who want to do the rare earth minerals.
Sure. Well, it's near and dear to my heart because I just kind of, I'll call it recently in the last 5 years, got involved with mining. And I didn't realize how many of our products, virtually everything you and I use, is tied somehow to mining in the supply chain. Yet mining is one of those things that virtually disappeared by I'll call it regulation strangulation, right? So that would be a good one.
Mining is important in our district.
Oh, totally.
Our rural districts, a lot of mines.
Mhm.
My grandpa,
Mhm.
not it's a different, was a coal miner in West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
So It does serve a purpose, and
Hmm.
we have enough knowledge now to where we can do it ecologically.
Do you buy the fact that we should still be on this trajectory for sustainable, allegedly sustainable energy? What do you think about that whole concept of balancing? Because obviously Trump is moving us away from that. Do you think he's doing the right thing?
I think that different things work in different areas. Here in Vegas, solar's great for us,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the here all and end all. I think there has to be a balance of the energies.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does, except that solar panels, A, they incorporate a lot of uranium.
True.
They're totally unrecyclable. They have the old ones, Gen 1, had a 20-year life cycle. Now they have a 40-year life cycle, but in an earthquake, guess where their life cycle is?
Over.
Right. So there's no recycle program.
Right.
So, yes, I love solar. The
The
DoD,
theory of
the
solar.
theory of solar,
Right.
DoD has some really great solar energy technologies that they are using that are far more efficient than everything out in the consumer market. What about getting in there and saying, hey, what are some of the things that the DoD has used taxpayer funds to develop that could then be injected into?
Why aren't we doing that?
Hmm.
Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we incorporating this stuff into our day? You know, I've been doing a lot of research on carbon capture technology,
That's cool. I've never
and
heard of
I
that.
think it's fascinating.
Mm.
It's fascinating.
Is that something? Is it carbon because it's fullerene based?
Well, the purest basic form is
Mm-hmm.
plant more trees around
Oh.
these big plants. This is
Mm-hmm.
my theory. This is the Rebecca theory. This is what, and you know, what do our trees and our plants grow on?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
what these factories are emitting. And so maybe that's something we need to look at is implementing that more. Not all carbon capture is something we want to do, but there are a lot of different avenues that we still haven't explored or we've only begun to explore.
Oh, well, it sounds like I think you've done a lot of research, and it's exciting that you have an open mind to, looking at a lot of different things. So I know we're going to be leaving soon, but I just wanted to say if I'm that voter that's thinking, who should I vote for CD4? And I come across you, what would be your elevator pitch to me? Why should I vote for Rebecca Wood?
Because I care.
Hmm.
I'm not in it for fame or fun, money or glory. I've lived here in Vegas for 35 years. I've lived in what's now CD4 for 28 years.
Mm.
I feel like I have the well rounded experience in life to
Mhm.
represent a multitude of people.
Mhm.
I understand what it's like to struggle to get the money for diapers or formula, and I understand what it's like to have the extra money to help somebody who needs the money.
Mhm.
You know, when my husband first moved here, he was an airman. We made $500 a month,
Oh wow. So,
you know,
are you a fan of UBI,
UBI.
Universal Basic Income?
No, I'm not.
I didn't think you were. Hey, this is Denise Mraz with Vegas Views, and Rebecca, I've loved being with you today. I hope you can come back and see us again soon. And
Thank you.
let's get out our constitutions and try to apply something to the craziness of the coronavirus crisis.
And if
Right?
they want to learn more about me, they can go to our website
Yes.
at rebeccawood.us.
That's great, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you.